CDF and the Minister of Defence. Today I outlined the Government's decision to deploy a military training mission to Iraq as part of New Zealand's overall contribution to the international coalition against ISIL. I chose to make the announcement in a ministerial statement in the House, giving Parliament due respect and affording every political party an opportunity to have their say on what is a significant decision for New Zealand. A training mission like this is not without danger, and this is not a decision we have taken lightly, but it is, in my opinion, the right thing to do. I welcome the Chief of Defence here today to set out more details about the mission, including the steps being taken to provide every possible protection to our training forces. So I'll pass over to the CDF and then we just take questions to any one of the three of us.
A short time ago, the Prime Minister spoke to Parliament outlining the decision to commit New Zealand Defence Force personnel to a non-combat training mission. This building partner capacity mission is in support of the Government of Iraq's request to help counter the threat posed by the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, ISIL. This deployment will help the Iraqi security forces build capacity to eventually train themselves. This afternoon I'd like to describe for you how the New Zealand Defence Force aims to achieve the task set by the government, by showing you who else is also part of the coalition and how the New Zealand Defence Force will undertake the operation and what this commitment entails. Before I do that, I want to make it clear that as Chief of the Defence Force and as Principal Military Advisor to the government, I've had to satisfy myself as to what we can achieve and what risks there are of deploying our men and our women on this training mission. In consultation with other senior defence leaders and the wider government, security and intelligence community, I have formed the view that this is a mission within the capabilities of the New Zealand Defence Force and advise the government of that. The New Zealand Defence Force has a long and proud tradition of training and partnering security forces. It is a task we are well suited for, and we have had many successful results. From working alongside Indigenous forces in Malaya in the 1950s to the ongoing training mission we have today in Afghanistan, our service members have exhibited an aptitude to building the capacity of those who have sought our help. At this point, can I say that I wish to present to you a complete as possible technical assessment and an explanation of this deployment. You will also appreciate there are a number of things which, for operational security reasons, I will not be disclosing. This slide shows the coalition members contributing some form of assistance of the 62 nations so far. Of those, about a third have provided a military contribution. We are not alone in supporting the government of Iraq to counter the threat of ISIL. Each nation has determined its own contribution. The New Zealand Defence Force contribution is that of a non-combat training mission based at a military complex near Taji. This slide shows where Taji is in relation to Baghdad and the countries that border Iraq. It shows that Taji is very close to Baghdad, only about 30 kilometres away. A small scoping team recently travelled to Taji military complex, and from the scoping visit and other information, it has been assessed as a suitable site to conduct a building partner capacity mission. As the Prime Minister has explained, Taji has now been confirmed as the home of our training contingent, most likely alongside the Australian Defence Force. The Taji military complex will be the principal location of our efforts. However, a number of staff officers will also deploy to serve in headquarters roles. Additional logistics personnel will also be required to be deployed to various places in the region to support the deployments to Taji. This slide shows a satellite view of the Taji military complex. This shows it is a very large base that incorporates a military airfield. What is not shown on this slide is the location and layers of coalition and Iraqi security forces, which I will not divulge for operational security reasons. At this point, it is worth showing where known ISIL locations are in relation to the Taji military complex. This map also shows approximately where ISIL has spread in Iraq. As to the question of force protection for our personnel at Taji, I'll come to that shortly. 2 weeks ago, the Defence Minister authorised the Defence Force to commence formal contingency training for a possible building partner capacity mission to Iraq. Today I've directed this training now be deemed pre-deployment training. This is now the Defence Force's key focus. I expect the deployment to occur sometime in May, with staff officers taking up their posts next month. The overall New Zealand Defence Force commander and senior national officer of this deployment will be based in Baghdad. Although likely to be a joint mission with Australia, as Chief of Defence Force I retain full command of all our forces, with the Government of New Zealand retaining ultimate decision-making authority over the nature and scope of the activities of the New Zealand personnel in the mission. In terms of training the Iraqi security forces, this is expected to cover a broad range of individual and organisational military skills. This includes basic weapon skills, individual and unit military skills to prepare the Iraqi security forces for combat operations. It also includes the planning of operations and medical and logistics support to operations. Training will also be provided to the Iraqi security forces so that they can assume responsibility for the delivery of the training program in the future. Many commentators have made reference to the time, the resources and costs previously committed to training Iraqi security forces. The principal question raised is, how is the training of the Iraqi security forces this time different or transformed from the past if we are expecting a better outcome? This is a critical question, and I'd like to address that now. We, like other coalition members, have taken the lessons of the past and looked carefully at the needs of the Iraqi security forces today. What is apparent is that the Iraqis must be fully integrated into the development and the delivery of their own training. That includes working together to assess the objectives of the training and what the agreed mutual outcomes will be. True partnership means working together, not a them and an us approach. It is not just about how our trainers will teach their counterparts, but it is vital for our trainers to better understand how Iraqi soldiers learn. Though the training program is yet to be finalised, we would expect to train significant numbers of Iraqi personnel during each training cycle. This is a substantial contribution to helping build the capacity of the Iraqi security forces. Success looks like Iraq security forces that the New Zealand Defence Forces helped to train being able to commence combat operations at a trained level as agreed by both the Iraqis and coalition trainers. Success also looks like Iraqi trainers being able to carry on the work of the New Zealand Defence Force and coalition, thereby creating an independent, self-sustaining capability the Iraqi government to call on. I now want to turn to what this commitment entails, including force protection. This deployment will see up to 143 personnel deploying to Taji and other parts of the region, with 106 based in Taji. A training mission like this is not without risk. Because of that, a force protection element will be part of the deployment to support the training activities carried out at the base. All those deploying will be armed and as such will retain the right to self-defence. But this is not a New Zealand Defence Force mission to directly confront ISIL. It is a mission that's designed to train the Iraqi security forces so that they can better fight ISIL. This is what the New Zealand Defence Force is preparing to engage in. The pictures on the slide show some of the physical force protection measures that are typical of such bases in Iraq. These are physical barriers to protect the base. What the pictures don't illustrate is other force protection elements, such as intelligence, like the ability to use modern technology to watch the area outside the base. Coalition forces have considerable abilities in these areas, although again I won't be going into the details. However, I can say that our building partner capacity mission will be deployed within an important coalition base where force protection is a primary consideration. I can assure New Zealanders, as the Chief of Defence Force, everything possible will be done to ensure the safety of our personnel. Before we take questions, I'd like to say something to the families and friends of those who will soon deploy to serve on behalf of New Zealand. I know that the men and women of our armed forces are consummate professionals, and they have what it takes to succeed. The government has made this important decision to deploy New Zealand's armed forces to this training mission. It is our job as a Defence Force to deliver on our assignments with commitment, courage and professionalism. I am confident that our people will, in the finest traditions of our armed forces, do just that. Thank you.
Is there a status of the forces agreement?
The legal considerations which we're working on are currently being negotiated with the Iraq government, and as yet there is no status of forces agreement, although there are other measures that we can put in place that would ensure, give me the assurance I need that our forces will be protected legally while in theatre.
Would sending our troops with just diplomatic passports be enough to your mind?
As I said, there are a number of avenues we're exploring and has not yet been decided. One of the reassurances of the solution that's settled on has to satisfy me and the government that the appropriate protections are in place for our people. So it's speculative at this stage.
It's unlikely though, isn't it, that the Iraqi government agrees to establish the forces?
Well, I won't speculate. So as I say, there's a range of means that we're exploring to give our people the necessary protection they need in theatre.
Is it unusual though? Is it unusual to be going without that agreement in place for this type of arrangement?
In a number of missions, there's a period of negotiation where we look at what the correct legal instrument is, and the status of forces agreement is just one of those instruments. There are other instruments, and we'll explore those other instruments.
It seems odd to be committing troops already without having worked out the legal protections for those troops.
The troops haven't been committed yet. I've been given authority to prepare the troops for the deployment, and as part of the preparation is me satisfying to the government that they're prepared and ready to go, which in part includes having the legal framework in place.
Can you clarify what you said about the troops being armed? Did you say they would all be armed or just the protection forces?
Every personnel on the ground in Taji camp will be armed.
A question for the CDF. Given your risk assessments that you have done, what is the likelihood of a New Zealander getting killed on this mission?
In our risk assessment, I have ensured and will continue to ensure as we construct this mission that every prudent and available step will be taken to limit the risk to our people in Iraq.
What is that level of risk? What is the level of risk of a New Zealander being killed?
I'm not going to speculate on a New Zealander being killed, but you know as well as I do that Iraq is a very dangerous place, and part of our training and part of my commitment to the government and to the people who are going to deploy there is that we've taken every prudent step available to ensure they're safe, can conduct the mission and can come home.
Can you give us any idea of the rough split between the number of trainers in Taji base and the number purely there to protect them?
We have 16 specialised trainers in Taji, and the rest of the force are made up of people who provide logistics support, local protection, but the whole force has a mandate to give training in part, So in true traditions of the New Zealand Defence Force, you know, we do multitasking, but it doesn't mean we'll take vital people away from other parts of the mission. Our 16 specialised trainers are at the front end of our training delivery.
So,
how many
so
force
16 specialists, but others will be able to train. How many others are?
I have 106 people in Taji camp. They make up logistics elements, so our medical people, our logistics people, as well as a force protection element. But I won't be going into the detail of the breakdown of those
How
elements.
many of those troops will be designated force protection?
I won't be going into the detail on the specifics of a force protection
Will it be
mission.
a one-for-one ratio?
No, I won't be going into the details of how we'll protect our people in Iraq, other than to say that that's, as well as the mission, which is actually delivering on the training, foremost in my mind is the protection of the New Zealanders in Taji camp.
Have you got the
That's
opportunity to
6K by 7K base. I take no New Zealand soldier will step outside of that base.
Our mission is inside the wire in Taji camp.
Just to clarify, can you confirm that there will be more troops in that designated force protection role than there will be in the training role?
I'll have 106 people in Taji camp, 16 are specialised trainers as part of the mission.
You said that part of their job would be to help plan operations. Are they going to train Iraqis how to plan operations, or will the New Zealanders be literally planning their operations?
The New Zealanders won't be planning the operations, but they'll be taking through the construct of how to plan an operation.
Have you been given?
How much faith do you have in the Iraqi forces? Andrew Little says they're broken, they're corrupt, and they're not the right organisation to be taking down the Islamic State.
There's a baseline of where the Iraqi forces are, but you know, if you look at our track record, as I said, we have a long and proud track record, and some people have said we could have never trained the Afghan army from its start. And the success going through ANOA at this time bespeaks the fact that it doesn't matter what you start with. The added value of New Zealand Defence Force, our training approach, is amplified with the professionalism of our people. So we will start with anything, and we will work towards our mission to develop a professional Iraqi Defence Force.
What has the government asked you about SAS troops and the possibility of sending some in the future?
The current mission is around building partner capacity. There is not a role for the special forces within what the government's asking me. Notwithstanding that, I'm not ruling out that special forces may be used on instances to provide advice and guidance around areas such as force protection, or to provide assistance on visits of important people
That
to
means
Iraq.
they would go
But
there. They would go to Iraq.
core task, in those instances they could, but let me reassure you that the current mission is not a special forces mission. The people that we have in the rest of the army are sufficiently equipped and trained to carry out this mission.
Have the SAS been in Iraq either in their badge capacity as the SAS or as in some other advisory role already?
No.
You keep saying that this will probably be a mission with Australia. Why the probably? You know, you've had quite a few months to plan now.
Just because that's a decision to be made by the Australian government, and the formal taking of that decision hasn't been made yet. It's likely to be made, but that's a matter for the Australian government to make the call.
Just another question for CDF. Will the Iraqi troops that we're training, will they be training with live ammunition?
Yes, they will be.
Is there, so then how do you rate the risk of an insider attack while on the base?
That's one of the risks, along with many other risks, and we take prudent security measures. And again, we have experience on that type of risk of training in Afghanistan. So it's one of the measures that we'll take to ensure the safety and security of our people.
Seems like given that we will be behind the wire, that's one of the greatest risks, isn't it?
It's one of the risks.
Can you explain how New Zealand will be working with the Australians? Will we be part of a larger training unit? Will there be officers of equal rank, or will Australians be able to give New Zealanders orders?
I'll just clarify and make the point again that the Prime Minister made that the Australians have not yet committed to this. But we will partner with another nation, likely to be Australia, and there will be a task sharing role where each nation will bring the expertise of that nation to the training curriculum that will be conducted with the Iraqi security forces.
CDF, just on the 37 other personnel that will be at other bases around Iraq, what roles will they be having? What roles will they be doing?
As you'll be aware, you know, Iraq is a long way from New Zealand. There's a long supply line of everything from our morale and welfare support to the contingent, the rotation of troops, to our logistics supplies. So we'll basically be setting up a logistics supply chain that enhances the one that we have already supporting our other Middle Eastern missions, such as the MFO and Sinai, to ensure that that flow of logistics, that flow of support to the troops is in place.
Will any of those extra troops or any of those troops in Taji have an intelligence gathering role?
Intelligence is a broad term, so let me not dance on the head of a pin. A part of force protection is having an awareness of your environment. You can call that intelligence if you like, and I spoke about it in my address, that knowing what's happening outside the wire is an important part of force protection. I will not detail that where we have people placed in the system, but I will be drawing on intelligence to ensure that our people are safe.
And will that include assistance from officers from the GCSB or SIS who are there assisting your mission, CDF?
My Defence Force mission has New Zealand Defence Force officers and elements within it. There are not elements of those other agencies as part of the building partner capacity mission that I've briefed here.
Could you tell us if any Air Force assets will be used in this operation, moving the troops and equipment in and out, helicopters?
We're working now with our likely coalition partners, the partners in theatre, to look at how that force flow will work. So now the government have given the permission for us to plan this mission, which occurred, as you're aware, with the Prime Minister's statement today. We will now conduct the mission planning required to get our troops to theatre and support them. So no decision has been made here, but it's likely that our RNZF elements will be used in some role to get our people to Iraq.
Would they be used? Would they fly out of the base of the UAE that's been used before for Afghanistan?
It's yet to be decided where this supply pipeline will work from and to, or the intermediary steps.
Will any of that intelligence be used to help establish targets for coalition airstrikes, CDF?
The intelligence for this mission will be to ensure the safety of our training mission inside the wire in Taji camp.
So could it be used to establish targets for airstrikes?
No, I'll restate again that the intelligence that we're putting into this mission is to ensure that we know what's happening outside the wire so we can react if necessary.
And Prime Minister, will any spies from the GCSB or the SIS be going to Iraq like they did in Afghanistan to help provide intelligence for force protection?
Well, at this stage the advice is that's not required, but as I said this morning, we reserve the right to change that position, and we're constantly having discussions with the intelligence agencies about capability they might have as a sort of better picture is built up ultimately with our people in theatre. That could always change, so I can't 100% rule that out at this stage. Not planning to.
And in that same area of questions, just to confirm, it might also change that we send GCSB or SIS spies to help establish targets for airstrikes as well. That could still change in the future.
It's not part of what we're looking at the moment, but as I've always said, it's always been a possibility in the sort of work that they've either done in the past or could do. So again, I'm not going to rule that out.
And they would actually do that there in Iraq?
Well, quite a number of steps ahead because it's quite a hypothetical question, but there would be a number of locations you could in theory do that from, but again, I wouldn't get ahead of this.
But it could include Iraq, couldn't it?
Yeah, but I wouldn't get too ahead of this.
Can you give an assurance that our deployment won't go beyond 2 years?
Well, that's our intention. like all of these things, of course, there's always a review, and there'll be a review after the first 9 months. But I think we've tried to rest on a place where we think that fits with both the contribution we want to make and a realistic time frame for actually making a difference. It's also consistent with what President Obama has said is where he wants to see the US. So 2 years is the likely contribution.
How will you judge the effectiveness of the mission? Do you have a number of Iraqi soldiers that you need to train to a particular level? What's
Well, I mean, CDF can answer that question as well, but I mean, I think we saw in Afghanistan the significant difference that we ultimately made. And as the CDF pointed out, we started with some people that had very low skill levels, and over time we moved them up to be quite credible soldiers. We'll also be wanting to train the trainers so that ultimately it's a self-sufficient operation when New Zealand leaves. So I'm confident we can do that. We've certainly got great people who are well respected, and despite all the things that Labor might have said, the Iraqi Foreign Minister was very clear with us. The number one priority, the biggest thing he thinks that can make a difference, is actually training people so that they can support Iraq itself. In the end, diplomacy will be I think the major factor on whether things are successful long-term in Iraq, but Iraq needs some capability to defend itself against people that are brutally attacking their citizens.
If you can't get a status of forces agreement, will you get diplomatic passports?
Well, I think you're in a slightly red herring place with status of forces. I mean, in the end, the question you have to ask yourself is, will New Zealand soldiers, when they go overseas, have the legal protection required for them to carry out their duties and functions? The answer to that is yes, or they wouldn't be going. There are many pathways to achieve that, and we're quite confident will be achieved.
Is diplomatic passports one of them?
There are many options. I'm going to go through them all. I mean, the Foreign Minister's dealing with that issue. At some point he'll be in Baghdad taking us through that issue. We also raised that issue with the Iraqi Foreign Minister, who said to us it would be relatively simple, and he was quite comfortable the process would give us all the protection we needed, so we're quite comfortable.
Sorry, the status of forces is the ideal, isn't it?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's one way that these things can be achieved, but not the only way.
Prime Minister, the SAS will obviously go to Iraq, but you are going to give an undertaking they won't do anything beyond advising on force protection.
They're not going in a combat role, and I can't be 100% sure they're going to go. Ultimately, the CDF's made it quite clear that they're not really required as the overall composition of what's undertaking in terms of the training and the general people we have in Tajay. But as he quite correctly pointed out, they might go there in a specialist advisory role. There could be visitors from time to time. If there are, that we wouldn't want to take away from the protection people that are looking after our own soldiers. So when I went to Afghanistan some years ago, the SAS did accompany me because that was deemed by the defence and actually by the government of Afghanistan at that point, and I suspect by the government of Iraq if I was to make a visit, that's what they would prefer. So we always take that under advisement, but that's a likely and potential scenario. But in the way that I deployed them and Helen Clark deployed them before me, which was in differing functions, they are not the sort of functions we're thinking of here.
You deployed them after they had asked you if they could go back, and you took their views into consideration.
Yes.
Have they asked to go to Iraq?
They certainly haven't asked me. I think it was, no.
Can I ask CDF what effect it will have on morale, knowing that half of the Parliament doesn't approve of the deployment?
I listened to the parliamentary debate, and what I was very pleased with is most people who spoke at the end gave their best wishes to the Defence Force people, and I think that was the most telling thing. I think, in the democracy that we serve, and one we're working towards in Iraq, seeing that sort of a healthy debate in Parliament, the Prime Minister to take him to Parliament was the appropriate thing to do. You agree with many of the points. This is not just a military solution, and everyone spoke and part of the comprehensive solution. At the end of the day, I think there was resounding support for our soldiers who will deploy to Iraq, and our people of the Defence Force will take that to heart. That was support.
Can I just make one point on that?
Sorry.
If I could just make one point on that. You can put to one side, I think, some political parties have a well-established track record in these areas. But the real question you're asking is about, Her Majesty's loyal opposition, Labor. And the question is, do you believe them? Do you believe them that if they were in the same role that we're in government, Andrew Little would say no? Because I don't believe him. And I know that he is not saying what he would actually do. Because was Labor in government sent 60 engineers. Not a big difference in the number that we've got here. Labor in government sent the SAS in a combat role. Andrew Little has said airstrikes would be okay by him. Andrew Little has said people should go out in provincial reconstruction, building hospitals, schools and roads, in theatre, which would be far more dangerous than the thing that we're talking about here. Andrew Little's quite aware of the risks to New Zealanders. He's quite aware of the fact that there are 35 to 40 New Zealanders who present quite substantial risk, and there's a risk of people that are growing. That number that we identified some time ago when I gave my national security speech was 35 to 40 people. It's now between 60 and 70. We have a significant number of people who work in the region. We have New Zealanders that travel to regional locations, which are heavily dominated Muslim countries that have a huge number of foreign fighters that are likely to return. So all of these political leaders, but particularly Andrew Little, says he cares about the people of New Zealand. He knows that the forces are broken and that they need some help, but he says he'd do nothing. I just don't believe him. I'm sorry.
If you wanted to test,
if it's really true, then you'd have to question whether he'd make the right decisions for New Zealand. But if history is any indicator, if he was in my job, he would be sending trainers because that is the right thing to protect every New Zealander, because every New Zealander is at risk because of ISIL, and we know that for a fact.
Prime Minister,
Sorry, Prime Minister,
just on that...
you need to get back to the House, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, I'm
Sorry.
Good,
No,
go,
it's
go,
okay.
switch.